Well, thank you. Thank you for coming to this. It's great to be here. It's great that it's happening again. Thank you, Anutin, and this wonderful team. I've done many conferences. This is my favorite conference, and I will always come, at least as long as I stand up. And we're happy to sponsor. I am Roger Black. I'm with Type Network, and we have been originally Font Bureau, but Type Network has come to every BITS, and I hope we'll continue to do that. You can check our website out. We think we have the best fonts, and we have the best designers represented at Type Network. And just to start this off, I was talking to Anutin, and he said, take about 15, 20 minutes and tell us everything you know. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm working on my memoirs. At the rate I'm going, I need to live at least another 50, 60 years to finish. But one of the things that I'm trying to do is just not tell stories, but draw some lessons, draw some conclusions. And so today I'm going to take you through a few of the lessons that I've learned in just thinking about my work. And I'm going to show some really old work just for fun. I'm going to start with I'm going to start with the idea of letter spacing. This is maybe the hardest lesson. And I think Thai or the Indic scripts or any of the Asian scripts are even harder to letter space than Latin. But Latin can be hard. My father was an architect, and he said, just put about a ½ inch of space between each capital letter and you're fine. And that was something, and he liked kind of Corbusier-style stencil letters, and they look good spaced out. The thing is that you don't always get to do that. So everyone always said it's a stick and a ball problem. You're trying to, how do you space a bunch of sticks and how do you space a bunch of balls? I like, bolts and washers. So if you have bolts and washers, you have basically 3 different combinations if you've lined them up on a baseline. Two bolts have to be the farthest away. A bolt and a washer together are a little closer, but 2 washers get to be the closest. And once you realize that, you can probably space anything. It's a little hard with Latin because just look at this word from my title, learned. If you squint your eyes, you can see the AR combination is horrible. And the L and the E and the EA combination get very spaced out. So this is what I did. This is about as good as I could do with it. I think there are probably people in the room who know how to do this better. If you're a type designer, you of course build in the spacing, the side bearings, and then you can allow some exception kerning so that you can make some of these things. I didn't like this. Is the typeface is Californian. It was the very first Font Bureau typeface designed by Carol or digitized by Carol Twombly. It's a Gaudi face, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to make it work. But anyway, that's I think the hardest lesson and the longest part of my talk this morning. The next lesson is make it top heavy. One of the things that as a senior designer, looking at other designers' work, very often I'll like look over their shoulder and say, "Hey, turn it upside down," because the tendency and the way your mind works with gravity and the whole way that the world works, the heavy stuff goes to the bottom, and you start designing that way, and it looks very stable, but it looks boring. Remember, people only look at your designs very briefly. We don't have that much time anymore. And so you've got to get their attention. And one of the things I realized is like put everything at the top, defy gravity, make it top heavy. And I'm going to show you a page that's like shockingly a long time ago. This is 1967, 55 years ago. I was 19. I was working on my student newspaper at the University of Chicago. And there's a lot of text on this page. You can't see it here, but it's Corona. It's set in linotype. The heading is a broad gauge or a barbed Tuscan wood type that I had found in Vermont 2 summers before. And the Ultramadoni was set in phototype and pasted up and put in there. It's really weird to look at something you did 55 years ago, and I hadn't seen it in years. And I said, my God, I was not that bad at the beginning. So, of course, I have a lot of pages I can show you. They're not that great. So that's top heavy. The next one is elusive. The phrase elusive typography. And you don't hear this anymore. But when I started in the 60s, I worked for a fellow named Robert Dothard, who kind of traced his experience back to the Edwin Rudge printers, where Bruce Rogers, who was their top designer. And that was his phrase, elusive printing or elusive typography. The idea was that you read the text and then derive content or associations, context from the text, and then try to use the type to match it. Try to bring out the meaning in the actual choice of typefaces and the arrangement of the type. And that to me is sort of like the starting point for my work. Try to make the text work, get the meaning to go to the top. And some of that you do with a variety of tricks, but here's one. There's also this same typeface, Californian. This is set in monotype, in metal, and then the photostated or photographed to make it fit exactly. And John Gregory Dunn was a great California writer. Had moved to California fairly recently when this was written, and had he was married to Joan Didion. He was a very, very interesting kind of cultural writer. And I was trying to give this a kind of classical context. So I was thinking about California, the typeface Californian, and then Frederick Gowdy, who designed that, his relationship to the kind of arts and crafts movement. So I put it into a William Morris style border that Jim Parkinson drew. And then to make it modern, we colored it in. William Morris borders were never colored. They were always black and white. So it takes a kind of historian to understand that, but it made it a little fresher, a little more alive. But that's elusive typography. Here, the fourth kind of lesson I've learned, and it's really a trick, and it comes from the phototype or the offset era, paste-up era of typography, stat to width. That is, we had these machines called stat machines. We would make in the old days, a photostat was something you peeled apart, but we were making photomechanical transfer prints, PMTs, and we would take type. It was set on a photo typesetter, or sometimes like that previous page in metal, and then photograph it to the size we wanted. And I had a thought it was just stat to width. I remember to this day that at my first newspaper, the page width, which was LA newspaper in 1972, was 59 picas. So I still think 59 picas is the width that we want these lines to go. And sometimes you would paste up the two lines or subhead together. Sometimes the headlines needed to be spaced out so that you could keep them the same sizes. So here is one for New West magazine. We're still back in the 70s. And this was the famous art director, Mike Salisbury. I had brought in as a cover consultant because he was so great, and he's still alive. And I asked him, he said, "We'll do for this water cover, it's a very, shall we say, serious, not to say boring, article about water and politics, or two articles, a whole section in California." And he said, do the Ed Ruscha thing. Splash some water on the type. You can do that. You know how to do that. And I'll find you an airbrush artist who can fix it. And we did. And I, of course, by this time, was very busy. I was doing New York magazine as well as this one, New West in California, and flying back and forth. So I arranged this type to be set, and I explained to my colleagues that, just stat to width according to this layout, and I just used dummy type. Showed the layout, and then you got to send it by courier. We didn't have FedEx in those days to Utah, I think, to Salt Lake to the airbrush artist who Mike Salisbury had recommended. I'm coming back to California. They've done all this work. They got it painted. They got the airbrush done. Sent it off to the color separator, who prepared the film, and sent us a proof. And I'm looking at it, and it says, the vanishing water, the politics of lakes. And I look at the copy, and I said, you didn't paste it up right. And, today, you would just switch it, and you would be done. You would, hit save, and the film, it's already separated into 4 colors. You're done if you're going to print it. In those days, we had to repaste it up. We get a new composites Velox, a print from Sharp Type, and then send it back to Utah and get it painted again. This is all on deadline. We went sold it crazy, but that's the anguish of the old days. But the typography is still that stat to width idea. Stat to width also can create some interesting problems. I mean, very often you'll do something and you'll get very, upset, disappointed. But sometimes you can set a headline and learn and then just play with it. And the things you do by mistake are sometimes the best things that happen. And in this case, this is a photograph by Tony Lane. It's a little kind of oversaturated here, like those Chobani strawberries, and the the headline was the pockmarked poetry of Charles Bukowski, and I said, okay, let's just blast it up for this space at the top of the left page, at the top of the opening page, and we were setting. I wanted to use Monotype Antique Modern. This is the Lanston Monotype Antique Modern, not the Linotype version. And it only comes up to about 12 point. So I had it set, and they've sent galleys. This is from McKinsey and Harris in San Francisco, and I've statted these things to width. And the galleys were on newsprint, so it was letterpress. So the ink started spreading into the newsprint. And I blow, this little tiny type up to 59 picos wide. It looked like Ralph Steadman had drawn it. It was like, ink splattering everywhere. And then I looked at it next to the picture, and I said, "This is it." And then once I got the main headline, I said, "My God, we should call it Book," because that even makes it splashier. And that's the way he signed his paintings, and that was his nickname, Book. So that was an accident that went right. The next lesson is the power of association, which I sort of was referring to, or kind of that it's part of the elusive typography idea. I've been to many design conferences lately where designers show, like an old Bauhaus poster or something from the Russian constructivists or something that inspired them. And then they do something that's very much like that. They essentially are copying it. This, of course, will be what AI does for us in the near future. But I've always thought of it a different way. I like the idea of inspiration. And clearly, you need to work with you have to start somewhere, right? So they were going to do, this is at Rolling Stone magazine in the later 70s. They're doing a big story essentially about astronomy. And I was thinking, well, this is like a Scientific American story, because I was looking at these amazing pictures, amazing graphics that they were showing me, and it reminded me of this, like this little cover on the side that designed by Joel Snyder. Well, the original design was by Joel Snyder, and I love the modern. This is a illustration about fractals. I love the juxtaposition of the classical modern type, the Dido or whatever it is, with the extremely contemporary scientific graphic. And so when we got this astronomy story, it's the Viking mission to Mars. We had this amazing computer image, and but I said, let's do that same contrast a very classical type with this very modern thing. It'll give it will give a kind of a Scientific American feeling, and yeah, that's Centaur, Bruce Rogers type. And like Scientific American, we made the copy desk write the captions to fill exactly, and that's something you can you can do yourself now, but it's very hard to get copy to do that. Number 7, don't combine geometric sans with grots. Okay, nowadays there's such a mashup of typographic styles. It's pretty hard to do classifications. It's like everything has become a transitional. But when I was starting, there was a famous classifications of type by Maximilian Vox, and he was working really from historical ideas, so that the first Romans were humanists. They were the Jensonians, what previously were called old styles. And then you got the moderns, which he called didones. And then after that was transitional. My feeling was that you don't want to mix a humanist and a modern. And the same thing with the sans serifs. You don't want to mix a grot or with a geometric or a humanist. And that seems pretty obvious, but just to give you an example of how not everybody understands this, we'll look at the old HBO logo, the cable channel, the movie channel, and the current version from Warner Brothers Discovery. They renamed it as Max. It had become HBO Max as a streaming network, and then now it's just called Max. But they wanted to use a kind of humanist sans, but they wanted to combine that with the geometric O from the original HBO, and the thick and thins of the letter forms just don't make it to a circle. It's wrong, and it's ugly. How bad is it in my opinion? Well, I cancel my subscription. Forget it. I'm not going to watch this. Then we get to number 8. Never letterspace lowercase. This quote from Frederick Goudy is usually someone who would letterspace lowercase would steal a sheep. But many typographers believe he was a little stronger in his language. And I won't repeat that in public, but that I kind of agree with. That's probably what he said. So what's wrong with it? It really is just a question of legibility. If you're reading text, the letters need to hook together to create words. And if you letterspace it out, it kind of stretches it out. Now, sometimes it's cool, it looks fun. For those of us traditionalists are kind of like, nah, you can't ever do that. That's horrible. And then number 9, leave room for the invisible descender. This is something that doesn't make any sense in a digital era, but in setting a metal type, and a good deal of our conventions about type come from the metal era, when we were, if you had a capital, you had to leave space on the metal for the lowercase so it could line up if there were descenders going down below the baseline. So if you were going to set up big display type, you would have some descender space hooked in there. You couldn't overlap the lines the way we do now. I find that, like a lot of conventions, if you just crank it up one more notch. If you add more decenter space, it gives a little more dynamism or interest to the layout. And just to show you that I'm still working in this, my whole life does not revolve around stuff 50 years ago. This is from this year with AI art, but with the decenter space built in. So the logo, it doesn't have any decenters, but but I put a big white gap under it. And then there's, an inside layout. This is Jonas Peterson. I don't know if you know who that is, who's a photographer who's been experimenting with AI. Some of the best AI photographic efforts that I've seen. These old people, these hip old people are kind of amazing. But that decenter space still looks good to me. Finally, the kind of basic lesson that I learned is that type is not about letter forms. Type is about words. Type is a code where you're actually trying to convey language, to convey meaning, convey sense. And so my feeling is that great typography is not simply making it look good, making a graphic splash and kind of aggressive forms. It is meaning. And if you start with the text, if you start with the meaning, it really is great if you're a writer who's doing your own design, because you can go back and forth and fix the text to fit the design. If you have a great editor that you're working with as a designer, you can do this. You can do that, where they say, "Well, this would be better this way," and it will get across faster. We will have better connection with readers if we do it this way. And that's really, I think, my number one lesson is that the whole point of type is the meaning. It's the code for the language. It isn't just a form by itself. So that's it. I added an 11th. Well, actually, no. Here's an example of that before I'm done. If it's all about readability, then don't just use the typesetting that comes out of the can. This is Adobe Paragraph Composer. And I don't know if you can see my little notations, but you can see there's a widow, details. They can't have widows. But also, like, I really think in text, and if you look back at my slides, you can see that it all works this way. You want in display type, you can't really worry about for small text, but for display type, you want the phrases to be on their own lines. You want to probably use ragged right. So the word titles behind that dash is kind of hanging out there. There's an article down in the third to last line, too, that's just sitting out at the end of the line. What if you, don't end lines with articles, avoid widows and orphans, and just fix it? It means you've got some short lines, but the end result is it's easier to read. The meaning comes faster to the reader. So that's it. Those are my 10 rules. There are actually many more if you're interested. I'm happy to send you these slides if you like. And I added an 11th, which is always have a good lunch. This is sort of, people who know me know that I always have a fairly long lunch. I like to go out to lunch with other people. We like to go to good restaurants, sit around and talk, meet new people, bring new people and that's a central part of the day. You get new energy. Nowadays, I go home and take a nap after that, but the idea is that let's have a great lunch, and so Type Network is giving you lunch today. Thank you, and thank you, Newton.
Thank you very much. Give me a hand. There. That's an inside joke.
Thanks.
You can ask Roger during the lunch break. How about
Absolutely.
that? There.